Good morning. Today we have a very lovely recipe, nice and light, and it's vegetarian with rice, tomatoes, basilico, garlic, parsley, and the juice of the tomatoes, which I had taken the inside out. Make a big hole in it, take everything that's inside, put it in a plate. That is to soften the rice. We're going to do them in the oven. This is how you do it. Cut this bit off, and we cut round, trying not to hole the tomato because otherwise it's going to fall out the bottom. And we'll fill them up with rice. On the outside of it, we're going to have some really lovely potatoes, and here you go. So I've started that off. I've cut them all up already, so we won't be too long doing this video, otherwise you'll all get annoyed with me. Okay, so we put a tiny bit of salt onto the tomatoes, a bit on the inside as well, just a little tiny bit, because we're going to put some salt in the rice. We have 1 spoonful of rice for each tomato. In this we'll be cutting garlic, very, very, very small, so that we don't smell a lot. Just half a head of garlic will do. We don't want a lot of it in there because we want the taste of the tomatoes and the rice, not a lot of garlic. But this gives it a little, a bit of hint of how can I say, a little bit more taste. Basilico. Put it all into a nice bit of basilico and parsley. This is all put in just to give it a bit of flavour. But as I said, the garlic, if it's too much, you can only taste the garlic afterwards and you won't be able to taste the rice with the tomatoes. The tomatoes have to be ripe, because if they're not ripe, you won't be able to cut them well and you won't be able to get the seeds out, and it won't be very tasty. In this rice mixture, I'll put 1 spoonful of rice for each tomato. We've got garlic, parsley, basilico, a bit of ground black pepper, a little bit of salt, and the juice of all the tomatoes. If you don't get a lot of juice out of the tomato, you can have a canned tomatoes and take the juice out of that. It won't make a lot of difference. You pour that into the rice, give it a very quick stir. This should cook in the oven, but it has to be quite a little bit of juice, otherwise the rice will just dry out. And this is what it looks like. Okay. Before I started, I did some wedged potatoes, so we can put them round the tomatoes and they hold themselves. 1 potato, this is a little potato, cut into 2. If it's a big potato, cut into 4, as long as it's a nice long wedge, because we have to stick it round the tomatoes. Okay, took the water out of that. So we get ourselves high tray, because the tomatoes are quite high. Olive oil underneath with the tomato. Just, well, 3/4 of a way up, even a little tiny bit less, because we're going to have the growth of the rice, and we'll come over the top. So let's just say a little bit over halfway the rice. That's it. This one's a bit over the top. Make sure it all goes into the side, because actually the rice does tend to grow. Try not to get all the juice, but a bit of rice as well. On the top, put a bit of juice. There you go. Put them into this tray. I hope you can see this. There you go. There it is. The bigger the tomatoes, the more rice I suppose you can get into them. Because if they're small tomatoes, yes, you can do it as well with small tomatoes, but when they're bigger, you can get more filling. This one's a bit smaller, but we shall manage it. There you go. So we have 6 tomatoes. There you go. That's it. This one's a bit over the top. We'll take a bit out of this. It's too much. Put more, a little bit of rice because it's too much juice. Here you go. Then afterwards we get a normal tomato. Cut it. Six little slices. And we put on the top of the tomato filled with rice, like this. If it's a bit big, just cut it, there's no problem. And there we are. It's like a cover to it. And then just put your wedged potatoes on the side, in the middle. The wedged potatoes tend to hold them together. Get rid of this. Okay, you can see me better now. Move this as well. Okay, and put the wedged potatoes here. Upstanding, if you can manage it, because they do tend to fall. There you go. And these will cook in with the tomatoes. This is a good plate to even prepare for the evening. It's nice and filling. As I said, a vegetarian plate. Dry my hands off. Put a little bit of salt onto the potatoes. There you go. And a bit of olive oil. Also on the potatoes it's good to put a bit of olive oil because it makes them go nice and brown. There you go. And now in the oven for 45 minutes. Have a look in case the potatoes have to be turned upside down. 45 minutes should do in 200 degrees, the oven. After about 45 minutes, you'll have a beautiful plate and nothing else. This is the end of the world. For the next video, see you soon.